The headlights cut through the December darkness at exactly 9:47 p.m. Dominic Moretti killed the engine of his black Lincoln Town car and sat in the silence that followed. Snow fell in thick, lazy flakes, coating the windshield, muffling the world outside. The kind of snow that deadened sound, the kind that made secrets easier to keep. He'd left the sit-down in Cicero 3 hours early. Something gnawed at him, an instinct honed over 20 years of survival in a business where instinct was the difference between breathing and bleeding out in an alley. Joey Numbers Costello had been talking too much, sweating through his shirt in a room that was 60 degrees. The meeting wrapped, and Dom just left. Didn't explain. Didn't need to. When you're a capo in the Chicago outfit, you don't answer to anyone except the boss, and sometimes not even him. Now, sitting in his driveway, Dom understood why his gut had screamed at him to come home. The mansion was too bright. Every window blazed with light, the grand foyer, the second-floor hallway, the master bedroom on the east wing. Sophia had said she'd be at a charity gala at the Peninsula Hotel until midnight, some black tie thing for pediatric cancer research. She'd left at 6:30 in a silver Valentino gown that cost more than most people made in a month, diamonds dripping from her ears and throat like icicles catching fire. She wasn't supposed to be home. Dom opened the car door. The cold hit him immediately, that bone-deep Chicago cold that sliced through wool and leather and skin. His Ferragamo shoes crunched against the fresh snow as he stepped out, each footfall sounding too loud in the stillness. He adjusted his cashmere overcoat, a gift from his mother 3 Christmases before she died. The scent of his cologne Tom Ford Noir mixed with the clean metallic smell of winter air. He took 3 steps toward the front entrance. That's when he heard it. Through the second-floor window, cracked open despite the cold, a sound that stopped him dead. Laughter, his wife's laughter. Not the polite, practiced laugh she used at charity galas and family dinners. This was different. Breathless, unguarded, intimate. The kind of laugh that only comes when you think no one else is listening. And beneath it, a man's voice. Low, familiar. Dom's hand moved on instinct, sliding beneath his coat to the 9mm Beretta holstered at his hip. The gun was warm from his body heat, the grip textured and familiar against his palm. His index finger rested along the slide, not on the trigger, not yet. He'd learned trigger discipline before he learned to shave. His heart didn't race. His breathing didn't quicken. Dominic Moretti didn't panic. But his pupils dilated in the darkness, his jaw clenched so tight his molars ached. And deep in his chest, something cold and sharp began to bloom. He took another step toward the house. A hand shot out from the shadows near the service entrance and grabbed his forearm. Dom's reaction was immediate. His free hand reached for the wrist that held him, ready to twist, to break, to neutralize the threat. But the grip was gentle, insistent, but not aggressive. "Don't move," the voice was a whisper, barely louder than the falling snow. "Not yet." Dom's eyes adjusted to the darkness. The hand belonged to a woman, slender fingers, short nails, calluses on the palm from work. He followed the arm up to the face, half hidden in the shadows of the mansion's east wall. Amara Hayes, his housekeeper. She was 26, maybe 27. He'd never asked. Sophia had hired her 6 months ago through some agency downtown. Quiet, professional, the kind of person who moved through a room like smoke, there and gone before you really noticed. She wore the standard uniform tonight, black slacks, white button-down shirt, her hair pulled back in a tight bun that emphasized her cheekbones and the intensity of her dark eyes. Those eyes were wide now, not with fear, exactly, with something else, determination. She pulled him deeper into the shadows, her finger pressed to her lips, the international symbol for silence, for secrets. And Dominic Moretti, the man who'd survived 3 assassination attempts, who'd built an empire on calculated violence and stone-cold certainty, listened. "She's going to kill you." Amara's voice was barely audible, each word carefully controlled to keep it from carrying. Her breath formed small clouds in the December air between them. "Christmas Eve, antifreeze in your whiskey." I heard everything. The words landed like physical blows. Dom's grip tightened on his gun, not pulling it, just holding, grounding himself in something solid while the world tilted sideways. "Say that again." His voice came out rougher than he intended. Amara met his eyes without flinching. Most people couldn't hold his gaze for more than a few seconds. She didn't look away. "Your wife," she said, each word precise and deliberate. is planning to murder you. 2 days from now, Christmas Eve, during the family gathering. She's going to put antifreeze in your whiskey. It'll look like a heart attack. The doctor's already paid off. Dom's jaw worked. His pupils dilated further, adjusting not just to the darkness but to the information being dropped on him like a bomb with a lit fuse. He looked up at the second-floor window, at the light spilling out into the winter night, at the shadow of movement behind the curtains, two figures, close together, moving in a way that suggested intimacy, ownership, betrayal. Who's up there with her? His voice was flat now, dead, the voice he used before someone stopped breathing. Amara hesitated, just for a second, but in that second, Dom saw the answer in her eyes before she spoke it. "Your cousin," she whispered. Marco. The name hit him like a hollow point to the chest. Marco Santoro, his blood, his underboss for 8 years, the man who'd stood beside him at his mother's funeral, who'd helped him rebuild the family after his father was gunned down in the parking lot of Rossi's Pizzeria in 1989, who'd sworn loyalty on his mother's grave, on the bones of their grandfathers who'd come over from Sicily with nothing but determination and violence in their hearts. Marco. Dom's breath came out in a sharp cloud of white. He tasted copper on his tongue. He'd bitten the inside of his cheek without realizing it. The snow continued to fall around them, each flake drifting down in silence, covering the world in a blanket of white that would be filthy and grey by morning. The night smelled like winter and wood smoke from someone's fireplace down the street. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Normal sounds. A normal night. Except nothing would ever be normal again. Dom looked at Amara Hayes, really looked at her for the first time since she'd started working in his house. This woman who cleaned his floors and pressed his shirts and moved through his life like furniture. This woman who had no reason to risk anything for him. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Amara's expression didn't change. "Because it's wrong," she said simply, "and because you deserve to know before they kill you." From above, through the cracked window, another sound drifted down. His wife's voice soft and satisfied. "Tomorrow night, baby. Just one more day." And a man's laugh. Marco's laugh. The sound of two people celebrating a murder they thought was already done. Before I tell you who that man was to Dominic, why this betrayal cut deeper than any bullet he'd ever dodged, hit that like button if you believe in loyalty. Real loyalty. The kind that doesn't break the first time money or temptation walks through the door. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Someone you would have died for? Because what happens next, what Dominic discovered in the hours that followed, it's going to make you question everything you thought you knew about family. To understand why 2 words whispered in the darkness changed everything, you need to understand the world Dominic Moretti built. And the world that built him, Chicago, 1998. The city sprawled along the southwestern shore of Lake Michigan like a sleeping giant, concrete and steel, and ambition wrapped in a winter coat. The Sears Tower punctured the sky at 1,450 feet, casting its shadow over the loop where businessmen in Brooks Brothers suits made legitimate fortunes, while, in backrooms and social clubs scattered throughout the city, men in equally expensive suits made fortunes the IRS would never see. This was the era of transition. The aftermath of the RICO Act, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, had gutted the old guard. The feds had spent the 80s and early 90s systematically dismantling the traditional Italian-American crime families. Wiretaps, informants, flipped soldiers who traded loyalty for reduced sentences. The days of Al Capone's brazen violence were long gone. The era of Tony Accardo's quiet empire had faded into history. What remained in 1998 was something different, smarter, more insulated. The Chicago outfit, that's what they called it. Never the Mafia, never Cosa Nostra, just the outfit, had adapted. They'd learned. The flashy restaurants and social clubs that once served as headquarters were now tourist attractions. The violence that once decorated the streets was now surgical, rare, used only when absolutely necessary. They'd gone corporate. Construction contracts, union control, legitimate businesses with illegitimate backroom deals, strip clubs and waste management, video poker machines in bars across the Midwest, money laundering through car dealerships and restaurants. It wasn't as romantic as the movies. It was just business. But it was still the life. And once you were in, until death carried you out. Little Italy sat on the near west side, Taylor Street running through its heart like an artery pumping blood through the body of the city. The neighborhood had shrunk over the decades, urban renewal and the construction of the University of Illinois Chicago campus had swallowed blocks of the old community, but what remained held on with fierce pride. Red, white, and green painted on fire hydrants, the smell of garlic and tomato sauce drifting from restaurants where the recipes were older than the Republic. Mario's Italian Lemonade, Pompeii, Rosebud, places where deals were made over ossobuco and Barolo, where handshakes still meant something, where the old ways survived in a world racing toward the millennium. River North, just across the Chicago River from the Loop, had transformed in the 90s into the city's art district. Galleries and converted warehouses, trendy restaurants where a plate of pasta cost $50 and tasted half as good as what Nonna made in her kitchen on Taylor Street. This was where the new money congregated, where the outfit's money, cleaned and pressed and legitimate, bought penthouses with lake views and parking spaces for Mercedes and BMWs. And then there was the Gold Coast, old money, mansions on Astor Street where Chicago's elite, the ones whose family fortunes came from meatpacking and railroads and steel, looked down on everyone else. Tree-lined streets, doormen, private clubs where membership was inherited, not bought. The outfit had always existed parallel to this world, occasionally intersecting when politicians needed campaign contributions or when a businessman needed a problem solved that couldn't be handled through legal channels. Barrington Hills sat 40 miles northwest of the Loop, far enough from the city to feel like a different world. This was horse country, estates on 5-acre lots, winding roads without sidewalks. The kind of place where Chicago's power players, legitimate and otherwise, built their castles away from the noise and chaos of the city. This was where Dominic Moretti had built his fortress. But the fortress hadn't always been his. Dominic was born in 1960, the only son of Vincent Moretti and Isabella Moretti, née Castellano. Vincent ran a crew for the outfit's street-level operations, juice loans, bookmaking, the occasional hijacking. Not a boss, but respected. A made man who understood that loyalty and silence were the currencies that bought you breath in this world. Isabella wanted her son to be different. A doctor, maybe. A lawyer. Something legitimate. She made Vincent promise that Dominic would go to college, would have choices. Vincent promised, but promises in this life have expiration dates. Dominic was 29 years old, fresh out of Northwestern with a degree in business administration he'd never really use, when his father was murdered in the parking lot of Rossi's Pizzeria on a cold March night in 1989. 4 shots from a .38. Vincent was meeting with Johnny, the Weasel, Gianelli to settle a territorial dispute. The Weasel thought Vincent was moving in on his loan-sharking territory in Bridgeport. Words were exchanged, voices raised. The Weasel pulled the trigger before Vincent could even reach for his own piece. Dominic got the call at 11:15 p.m. His mother, Isabella, collapsed when they told her. She'd die 2 years later. The doctors said it was a stroke, but Dominic knew better. It was a broken heart. She'd spent 35 years watching the door, wondering if each goodbye to Vincent would be the last. And one night, it was. The old bosses expected Dominic to step up. It was the natural order, father to son, blood to blood. They gave him his father's crew, his father's territory, his father's debts and alliances and enemies. Dominic could have walked away, could have taken his degree and his mother's life insurance and disappeared into the legitimate world. He didn't. Not because of honor or tradition or some romantic notion of family legacy. He stayed because Johnny, the Weasel, Gianelli, was still breathing. And as long as that rat bastard walked the earth, Vincent Moretti's death remained unavenged. It took Dominic 6 months to plan it. He didn't rush, didn't let emotion cloud judgment. He studied the Weasel's patterns, his routines, his weaknesses. He learned patience, discipline, control. On a September evening in 1989, the Weasel's body was found in a dumpster behind a strip club in Cicero. 2 shots to the back of the head. The message was clear. This was an execution, not a crime of passion. This was justice, outfit style. Dominic never confirmed he pulled the trigger. He didn't have to. Everyone knew, and in knowing, they understood that Vincent Moretti's quiet, college-educated son was not to be underestimated. Over the next 9 years, Dominic rebuilt his father's crew into something more efficient, more profitable, and far more dangerous. He modernized operations, brought in technology computers, encrypted communications, offshore banking. He legitimized businesses that could be legitimized and insulated the ones that couldn't. He understood that the future of organized crime wasn't flashy violence, it was invisibility. By 1998, at 38 years old, Dominic Moretti was a capo in the Chicago outfit, controlling operations across the South Side and western suburbs. He commanded a crew of 20 made men and twice that many associates. He generated millions in annual revenue through construction contracts, union control, gambling operations, and loan sharking. He sat at the table when decisions were made. He was respected, feared, untouchable. But if you watched closely, if you were invisible enough to observe without being noticed, you'd see the other side of Dominic Moretti. Every Sunday morning, without fail, he visited Mount Carmel Cemetery in Hillside. He'd park his Lincoln near the Mausoleum District and walk to his parents' graves, Vincent and Isabella, side by side under matching granite headstones. He'd stand there for 20 minutes in silence. Sometimes his lips moved, sometimes they didn't, but he never missed a Sunday. Not for business, not for anything. When his driver, Sal Benedetto, had mentioned just once, in passing, that his daughter Angela was getting married, but the reception hall had doubled its price at the last minute, Dominic had made a phone call. The next day, the hall cut the price in half. When Sal tried to thank him, Dominic waved him off. "Your daughter deserves a nice wedding. That's it." When Children's Memorial Hospital needed a new pediatric wing, an anonymous donation of $2 million appeared through a shell corporation registered in Delaware. The hospital administrator tried to track down the benefactor. The trail went cold after 3 layers of paperwork. But in Little Italy, people whispered about who really paid for those sick kids to get better care. This was the duality of Dominic Moretti, monster to his enemies, loyal, even generous, to his people. He'd kill you without hesitation if you crossed him. He'd also pay for your kid's surgery if you asked respectfully and deserved the help. He understood power. And he understood that power without loyalty was just tyranny waiting to collapse. But even power couldn't buy him a real marriage. Sophia D'Angelo came from New York, Brooklyn specifically. Her family had connections to the Gambino organization, nothing major, but enough that the alliance made sense when the brokers started talking. A marriage between Chicago and New York, a strengthening of ties, good for business. Isabella Moretti, dying slowly from the stroke that would eventually kill her, had made Dominic promise one thing: "Don't die alone, Dominic. Give me grandchildren. Give me something beautiful before I go." So in 1995, Dominic Moretti married Sophia D'Angelo in a ceremony at Holy Name Cathedral, 300 guests, a reception at the Drake Hotel, an 8-piece band, champagne towers and a cake that cost $5,000. It was a spectacle. It was not a love story. Sophia was 30 when they married, blonde, elegant, with the kind of beauty that took work personal trainers, stylists, dermatologists, the best money could buy. She knew how to dress for a charity gala. She knew which fork to use at a 5-star restaurant. She knew how to smile for photographs and make small talk with the wives of politicians and businessmen. What she didn't know or didn't care to learn was how to be a partner. The first year, Dominic tried. He came home for dinner. He asked about her day. He bought her jewelry and took her to Paris for their anniversary. He wanted to make it work, for his mother's memory, if nothing else. But Sophia was cold, transactional. She'd married him for the money, the status, the mansion in Barrington Hills with the circular driveway and the 8-car garage. She'd married the name, not the man. By the second year, they had separate bedrooms. By the third year, they barely spoke unless someone was watching. Dominic didn't love her. He'd tried, but you can't force something that isn't there. And Sophia didn't love him. She loved what he provided, the lifestyle, the country club memberships, the credit cards with no limits. It was a business arrangement that had stopped being good business. But divorce wasn't an option, not in their world, not without consequences, political, financial, personal. So they lived parallel lives in the same house, 2 strangers sharing an address and nothing else. The cracks were always there. Dominic just didn't realize how deep they ran until a black woman with calloused hands and sharp eyes whispered a warning in the darkness. Amara Hayes was born in Detroit in 1972, the year the Temptations were singing Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and the city was bleeding auto jobs like an open wound. Her father left when she was 8, just walked out one Saturday morning and never came back. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. Her mother, Diane Hayes, worked as an emergency room nurse at Detroit Receiving Hospital. Double shifts, night shifts, holidays. Whatever it took to keep the lights on and food on the table in their 2-bedroom apartment on the east side. Diane raised Amara with 3 rules. Work hard, stay honest, speak up when something's wrong, even if it costs you. Silence in the face of evil. Diane used to say while braiding Amara's hair on Sunday mornings before church, makes you just as guilty as the person doing wrong. You understand me, baby? You always speak up, always. Amara understood. She watched her mother come home exhausted, scrubs stained with other people's blood, barely able to stand, and still find the energy to help Amara with her homework. She watched her mother refuse to let bitterness about her father poison their lives. She watched her mother treat everyone with dignity, the homeless man who slept in the alley behind their building, the corner store owner who sometimes let them run a tab when money was tight, the police officers who patrolled their neighborhood. Diane Hayes was a good woman in a hard city, and she raised her daughter to be the same. When Diane was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in 1994, Amara was 22, working part-time at a bank and taking classes at Wayne State University. The cancer moved fast. By the time they caught it, it had metastasized to her liver, her lungs, her bones. Diane died in March 1995, 62 days after diagnosis. Amara was 23 years old, alone, and drowning in medical debt. She left Detroit in 1996. Too many memories, too much grief. She needed a fresh start, a new city, a chance to breathe. Chicago felt like possibility. She enrolled at the University of Illinois Chicago, studying business. She wanted to build something, a career, a life, something her mother would have been proud of. But tuition ate through her savings. Even with financial aid and student loans, she couldn't cover it all. After 1 year, she had to make a choice, drop out or drown. She dropped out. The housekeeping jobs came through an agency downtown, Professional Domestic Services. They placed workers in wealthy homes throughout the Chicago area. The pay was decent, the work was honest, and it gave Amara time to save money, to plan, to figure out her next move. In April 1998, she was placed with the Moretti household. Mrs. Sophia Moretti needed a live-in housekeeper. The job came with a private room above the garage, meals included, and a salary that was double what Amara had been making at her previous placement. She took it. Within a week, Amara understood what kind of house she'd entered, the men who visited and spoke in low voices in the study, the way Mr. Moretti carried himself, quiet power, controlled danger, the expensive cars in the garage with license plates registered to shell corporations, the security system that could have protected a military installation. She wasn't stupid. She knew what Dominic Moretti was, but she also saw the other things, the way he said please and thank you to the staff, the way he visited his mother's grave every Sunday, the way he looked at his wife with something that might have been loneliness disguised as indifference. Amara kept her head down, did her work, stayed invisible, until she heard something that made invisibility impossible. Quick question, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or state in the comments. I want to know how far this story is reaching. New York? California? Somewhere else entirely? Let me know. Marco Santoro was born 47 days after Dominic Moretti in the summer of 1960 on the same block in Little Italy where their grandfathers had settled after emigrating from Palermo in 1923. The two boys grew up 3 doors apart on Aberdeen Street, attended the same Catholic school, received their first communion on the same Sunday at Our Lady of Pompeii Church. They were blood. Cousins through their mothers, Isabella Moretti and Gabriella Santoro, were sisters, born 18 months apart, inseparable, until death did what life never could. Dominic and Marco grew up as brothers. They played stickball in the alley behind Conte's Market. They got into fistfights defending each other's honor on the playground. They stole cigarettes from Marco's old man and smoked them on the roof of the tenement. Coughing and laughing and swearing, they'd never end up like their fathers. Middle-aged men with broken knuckles and distant eyes who spoke in code and carried guns under their jackets. But promises made at 12 years old don't hold up against the gravitational pull of blood and legacy. When Dominic's father Vincent was murdered in 1989, Marco was there at the funeral, standing beside his cousin in a black suit that didn't fit right, his hand on Dom's shoulder during the graveside service. When Dom decided to stay in the life instead of walking away, Marco stayed with him. When Dom rebuilt his father's crew into something more powerful and profitable, Marco was his right hand, his underboss, his most trusted soldier. For 8 years, Marco Santoro served Dominic Moretti with what everyone believed was absolute loyalty. But envy is a patient disease. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show symptoms until the infection has spread too deep to cut out. Marco was charismatic in a way Dominic never was. Dom's power was quiet, controlled, based on respect earned through discipline and calculated violence. Marco's charm was loud. He told jokes that made everyone laugh. He remembered birthdays. He bought rounds at the bar. He was the guy everyone wanted to be around, the life of the party, the smooth talker who could sell ice to Eskimos and make them thank him for it. But charm doesn't build empires. Discipline does. And for 36 years, Marco Santoro lived in the shadow of a man who was born 47 days before him, but might as well have been born a different species. Dominic was the capo. Marco was the underboss. Dominic made the decisions. Marco executed them. Dominic sat at the head of the table. Marco sat to his right. Always second, never first. And somewhere along the way, loyalty curdled into resentment. Respect rotted into envy. Brotherhood became a mask. Marco wore so well that even he sometimes forgot it wasn't real. The cracks didn't appear overnight. They formed slowly, hairline fractures in a foundation everyone assumed was solid. 6 months earlier, in late June 1998, Dominic noticed something off. Money from a union contract, a sweetheart deal with Local 134 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, came up short. Not by much. $43,000. The kind of discrepancy that could be explained away as an accounting error, a delayed payment, a miscommunication between the contractor and the bagman. But Dominic didn't believe in coincidences. He called Marco to the house on a Thursday afternoon. Sal, the driver, picked Marco up from his condo in River North and brought him out to Barrington Hills. The meeting was in Dom's study, a room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, most of the books unread, a desk made from reclaimed wood that cost 15 grand, and a view of the backyard where a fountain shaped like a lion's head spilled water into a koi pond. Marco walked in wearing jeans and a black polo shirt, Ray-Ban aviators hanging from the collar. He smiled that easy smile, the one that had gotten him out of trouble since grade school. "Dom, what's going on?" "Sal said you needed to see me." Dominic sat behind the desk, a manila folder open in front of him. He didn't smile back. "Sit down." Marco's smile flickered. Just for a second. Then it came back, but tighter now, more careful. He sat in the leather chair across from the desk, legs spread wide, one arm draped over the armrest. Casual, confident. "Everything okay?" "You tell me," Dom said. His voice was flat, neutral, the voice he used when he was giving someone a chance to come clean before things got ugly. The Local 134 deal. "We were supposed to clear 220 after expenses. We cleared 177. "You want to explain the math to me?" Marco didn't miss a beat. "Yeah, I was going to bring that up. There was a delay with the contractor, some bullshit about permit fees the city decided to tack on last minute. We had to grease a few palms at the zoning office to keep the project moving. I got the receipts back at my place. I can get them to you tomorrow. 43,000 in permit fees and administrative costs. You know how these city assholes are. They see an opportunity to squeeze. They squeeze." Dom leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. He studied Marco the way a jeweler studies a diamond under a loupe, looking for flaws, imperfections, cracks in the clarity. "Who'd you pay off?" "Alderman's chief of staff, guy named Patterson, works out of the 42nd Ward office." "Patterson," Dom repeated. "And you got documentation? Receipts, bank transfers, the whole paper trail?" Marco's smile widened just a fraction, confidence returning. "You know me, Dom. I don't play fast and loose with the family's money. Everything's accounted for." Dominic held his gaze for 3 long seconds. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. "Get me those receipts by tomorrow. Noon. You got it." Marco stood, adjusted his jeans, started to turn toward the door. Then he stopped, looked back. "Dom, you know you can trust me, right? I mean, we're blood. That's got to count for something. Dominic's expression didn't change. Blood counts for everything, Marco. That's why I'm asking the questions instead of making assumptions. Marco's smile held, but something shifted behind his eyes. Something cold and quick, there and gone like a shadow passing over the sun. I'll get you those receipts. He left. Dominic sat alone in the study for 20 minutes after Marco drove away. He pulled a cohiba from the humidor on his desk, clipped the end, lit it with a torch lighter. He didn't smoke often, his mother had hated cigarettes, called them coffin nails, made him promise he'd never start. But cigars were different, celebratory, contemplative. He wasn't celebrating. The receipts showed up the next day. Everything looked legitimate. Bank transfers to an account registered to a lobbying firm that did business with the city. Invoices on official letterhead. Signatures. Dom made a call to a guy who owed him a favor at City Hall. Asked about Patterson, the chief of staff in the 42nd Ward. Patterson existed. The lobbying firm existed. But the payments? They'd been made all right, just not to Patterson. The money had gone into an account that, after 3 layers of shell companies and offshore transfers, traced back to a private LLC registered in Marco Santoro's name. Dominic didn't confront him. Not yet. He filed the information away, watched, waited, and started noticing other things. The way Sophia defended Marco when Dom questioned his decisions. The way Marco showed up at the house when Dom was out of town, saying he needed to discuss business with Sophia about some charity event she was organizing. The way they looked at each other across the dinner table during family gatherings, too long, too familiar, too careful not to be caught looking. Dominic Moretti was a lot of things, but he wasn't blind. He just didn't realize yet how deep the betrayal ran. The affair had started 18 months earlier, in the spring of 1997. A fundraiser at the Drake Hotel for some children's literacy foundation Sophia had gotten involved with. Black tie, 200 guests, an open bar and a silent auction, and a string quartet playing Vivaldi, while Chicago's elite pretended to care about poor kids learning to read. Dominic was in New York that weekend, sitting down with representatives from the Lucchese family to discuss a joint venture in Atlantic City. He'd told Sophia to go to the fundraiser without him, make an appearance, smile for the cameras, write a check. Marco had gone in his place, representative of the Moretti family, making sure their presence was noted, their generosity acknowledged. Sophia wore a red dress that night, Versace, low-cut, the kind of dress that required confidence and a body maintained through Pilates and a personal trainer who cost $200 an hour. Marco wore Armani, black suit, white shirt, no tie, aviators tucked into his jacket pocket, hair slicked back with too much product. He looked like a movie star playing a mobster, and he knew it. They'd had 3 glasses of champagne each by the time the speeches started, 4 by the time the auction ended. Sophia was drunk, not sloppy, but loose, laughing too loud at Marco's jokes, touching his arm when she talked, leaning in close when he whispered something in her ear that made her throw her head back and laugh, diamonds glittering at her throat. "Your husband doesn't appreciate you," Marco said. They were standing on the terrace overlooking Michigan Avenue, the city lights spreading out before them like scattered diamonds on black velvet. The May air was warm, humid, carrying the smell of the lake and car exhaust, and 1,000 different perfumes mixing in the urban night. "Dom appreciates what I do for his image," Sophia said. She was leaning against the railing, champagne flute dangling from her fingers. "That's not the same thing as appreciating me." "You know what I mean." Marco moved closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne Acqua di Gio, the same scent half the guys in River North wore because some magazine said it drove women crazy. "You're smart. You're beautiful. You deserve someone who sees that, who treats you like you matter." Sophia turned to face him. Her eyes were glassy from the champagne, but there was something sharp beneath the gloss, something calculating. "And that someone is you." "Why not?" Marco's voice dropped lower, intimate, conspiratorial. "We both know Dom doesn't love you. He married you because his dying mother guilt-tripped him into it. You married him for the money and the name. There's no shame in that. But you deserve more than a cold bed and a husband who treats you like a business expense. And what do you deserve, Marco?" He smiled, that charming, dangerous smile that had been getting him laid since high school. "Everything he's got." Sophia didn't pull away when he kissed her. She kissed him back, and in that moment, on a terrace overlooking Michigan Avenue with champagne and city lights, and the string quartet playing inside, the first betrayal was sealed. They started meeting in hotel rooms. The Ritz-Carlton on Water Tower Place, the Peninsula on Superior Street. Always during the day when Dom was handling business. Always careful, always discreet. It wasn't love. It was resentment, dressed up as passion. Two people using each other to take something from the man who had everything they wanted and nothing they needed. For 18 months, they played the game. The affair continued. The lies stacked up. The risk became part of the thrill. And then, in December 1998, Sofia discovered something that turned a sordid affair into a murder plot. The life insurance policy. $50 million. Double indemnity if death was accidental. Dominic had taken it out years ago as part of estate planning. Protection for Sofia, for future children they'd never had, for the family's interests if something happened to him in the course of business. He'd never thought his wife would see it as an opportunity. It was December 15th, 8 days before Dom would come home early and find his world shattered. Sofia and Marco were in a suite at the Peninsula Hotel, 5th floor, Lakeview. The bed was a mess of tangled sheets. Room service trays sat on the desk, club sandwiches and French fries neither of them had finished. A bottle of Grey Goose, half empty, sweated condensation on the nightstand. Sofia was sitting up in bed, naked except for the sheet pulled up to her chest. She had a folder in her lap, estate documents she'd taken from Dom's safe when he was at a sit-down in Cicero. $50 million, she said, voice quiet, almost reverent. Marco was at the window, looking out at the grey December sky and the lake beyond, smoking a cigarette, even though the room was non-smoking. He turned, eyebrow raised. What? His life insurance policy. $50 million. Double if it's accidental death. Marco crossed the room, sat on the edge of the bed, took the folder from her hands. Read the policy. His jaw tightened. Jesus Christ. $100 million if he dies in an accident, Sofia said. Her voice was calm, too calm. The voice of someone who'd already made a decision and was just waiting for permission to act on it. Split between his estate and beneficiaries. I'm the primary beneficiary. Sofia, he doesn't even love you, she said, looking at Marco now, eyes hard and bright. Dom doesn't love me. He doesn't love anyone, except his dead parents and his precious honor and his goddamn empire. We're just pieces on a board to him. You're the underboss. I'm the wife. We're roles he needed filled. Marco set the folder down on the bed. He should have walked away. Should have told her to put the documents back. Forget she ever saw them. Stop talking before they crossed a line they couldn't uncross. He didn't. What are you saying? Sofia met his eyes. I'm saying we could be free. Both of us. You'd have money, real money. Not the scraps he throws you while he sits on top of the empire your grandfather helped build. I'd have my life back. We could disappear. Go anywhere. Be anyone. You're talking about killing him. I'm talking about freeing each other. Marco stood up, ran a hand through his hair, paced to the window and back. The cigarette burned down between his fingers, ash falling on the carpet. It's too risky. You can't just kill a capo and walk away. The family would come after us. The cops would investigate. His crew, not if it looks natural. Sofia interrupted. Not if it's clean, no guns, no violence. Just an accident or a heart attack. Something that doesn't raise questions. How? Sofia smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Antifreeze. Ethylene glycol. It tastes sweet, so you can hide it in alcohol. It causes symptoms that mimic a heart attack, rapid heartbeat, difficulty breathing, seizures. By the time they figure out what really happened, we're grieving and collecting the insurance money. Marco stared at her, really looked at her for the first time since the affair started. This beautiful, cold, calculating woman who'd just laid out a murder plot like she was planning a dinner party. You've thought about this for 3 weeks, since I found the policy, and you're sure? Sofia's smile widened. Are you? Marco didn't answer right away. He finished the cigarette, stubbed it out in the remains of his club sandwich, poured himself a drink from the Grey Goose bottle, drank it in one swallow. Then he looked at Sofia at the $50 million answer to every resentment he'd carried for 36 years and made his choice. When? Christmas Eve, Sofia said, during the family gathering. He always drinks a whiskey after dinner. We'll do it then, in front of everyone. No one will suspect. And after? After, we wait, mourn, collect. And then we disappear. New identities, new life, everything we deserve. Marco sat back down on the bed. Sophia moved closer, her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath her palm. "Are you with me?" she whispered. Marco kissed her. Hard, desperate. The kiss of a man sealing a deal with the devil. "I'm with you." 9 days later, Dominic Moretti would come home 3 hours early. 9 days later, a housekeeper named Amara Hayes would whisper a warning in the darkness. 9 days later, everything Marco and Sophia planned would unravel in blood and betrayal and consequences they never saw coming. But on December 15th, 1998, in a hotel suite overlooking Lake Michigan, two people who thought they were smarter than the man they planned to murder celebrated a death that hadn't happened yet. December 9th, 1998, 2:30 p.m. The house was empty. Or it was supposed to be. Mr. Moretti was in Cicero for a meeting that wouldn't wrap until 6. Mrs. Moretti had left an hour earlier for a spa appointment at the Kohler Waters Spa in Burr Ridge, deep tissue massage, facial, something with hot stones that cost more than Amara made in a week. She wouldn't be back until 5 at the earliest. Amara had the mansion to herself. 6,000 square feet of marble floors and crown molding and rooms that echoed when you walked through them alone. It was her favorite time to work. No one watching, no one making demands. Just her in the house and the rhythm of cleaning vacuum, dust, polish, move to the next room. She was on the second floor, working her way through Mr. Moretti's study. The room smelled like leather and cigar smoke and old paper. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, mostly unread volumes, first editions of classics that looked good but collected more dust than attention. A mahogany desk sat in front of the window overlooking the backyard. Everything in the room was expensive, carefully chosen, meticulously maintained. Amara had cleaned this room a dozen times in the 6 months she'd worked here, but she'd never cleaned inside the desk drawers or the locked cabinet in the corner. Mrs. Moretti had been very clear during her first week. Mr. Moretti's private spaces were off limits. Don't open drawers, don't touch papers, don't ask questions. Amara respected boundaries. She wasn't here to snoop. She was here to work, save money, and eventually get back to school. But today, while dusting the bookshelf behind the desk, her elbow caught the edge of a small wooden box on the 3rd shelf. The box tumbled, hit the desk, and spilled its contents across the leather blotter. Keys. Maybe 15 of them, different sizes, different metals. Some looked new, others were old brass, worn smooth from years of use, the edges rounded and soft like river stones. Amara started gathering them, placing them back in the box. She didn't need trouble. Didn't need Mrs. Moretti walking in and accusing her of stealing or snooping. One key caught her attention, smaller than the others, brass, worn nearly gold from handling. It had a distinct shape round head with a small indentation in the center, like a thumbprint pressed into soft metal decades ago. She'd seen that shape before. The locked filing cabinet in the corner of the study had the same distinctive keyhole. Amara held the key for a moment, turned it over in her palm. Her mama's voice echoed in her head, the same sermon she'd heard 100 times growing up. "Don't go looking for trouble, baby. Trouble finds people just fine on its own." She put the keys back in the box. She put the box back on the shelf. She turned back to dusting the bookshelf and told herself she'd done the right thing. 15 minutes later, she was on the small step-ladder, dusting the top row of books, leather-bound volumes of Dickens and Hemingway that probably hadn't been touched since Mr. Moretti's mother was alive when she heard voices, faint at first, muffled, coming from somewhere close but not in the room. Amara froze, dust cloth in hand. The voices grew clearer. A woman's voice, a man's voice. Mrs. Moretti's bedroom was on the other side of the wall, connected to the study through a shared walk-in closet that was kept locked from both sides. The voices were coming through the heating vent near the ceiling, one of those old brass grates from when the house was built in the 70s, before central air. When forced air heating meant sound traveled through the ductwork like whispers through tin cans connected by string. Amara should have left, should have climbed down from the ladder, put away her cleaning supplies, and gone downstairs to work on the kitchen or the laundry or literally anywhere else. She didn't move, because the woman's voice wasn't alone, and it wasn't Mr. Moretti with her. 3 more weeks, Mrs. Moretti's voice, clear and cold through the vent. The policy updates January 1st. After that, it drops to 30 million. We do this now. We get 50. Double indemnity if it's an accident. That's 100 million, Marco. Marco, Mr. Moretti's cousin, his underboss, his blood. Amara's grip tightened on the dust cloth. Her heart kicked into a higher gear, adrenaline flooding her system even though she was standing still. And you're sure Dom won't suspect? Marco's voice. Deeper than Mrs. Moretti's, but with an edge of anxiety beneath the bravado. He trusts me, Sophia said. That's his weakness. He's so busy being the big man, the capo, the untouchable Dominic Moretti, that he doesn't see what's right in front of him. He thinks I'm shopping and getting my nails done and planning charity galas. He has no idea. If we get caught, we won't. Not if we're smart. Not if we stick to the plan. Amara's hands started shaking. She pressed herself against the ladder, trying to stay quiet, trying to breathe without making sound. Sweat prickled at her temples despite the December cold seeping through the windows. Walk me through it again, Marco said. I need to know every detail. Christmas Eve. The family gathering. Dom always drinks a whiskey after dinner, Macallan 25. 2 fingers. Neat. It's tradition. His father did it. His grandfather did it. Dom's superstitious about family traditions. How do you get the antifreeze in the glass without anyone seeing? I pour the drinks. I always pour the drinks. No one thinks twice about the wife serving her husband. I'll pour his whiskey in the kitchen, add the ethylene glycol, bring it to him in the living room. 2 ounces is enough. Maybe 3, to be sure. Amara's stomach turned. She tasted bile at the back of her throat. And it'll look like what? A heart attack. Exactly. Ethylene glycol, that's antifreeze. It metabolizes into glycolic acid and oxalic acid in the body. Causes rapid heartbeat, confusion, difficulty breathing, seizures. All the symptoms of cardiac arrest. By the time they do an autopsy, if they even do one, we'll have already gotten Dr. Greenberg to sign off on natural causes. You're sure Greenberg's on board? I paid him 100,000 up front, another 100 when he signs the death certificate. The man's got a gambling problem and 2 ex-wives bleeding him dry. He's motivated. And me? Where am I during all this? In the study with Uncle Carmine and Joey Numbers. Visible, accounted for. When Dom collapses, you come running. You call 911. You try to help. You're the grieving cousin, the loyal underboss. No one suspects the people who try to save him. There was a pause. Amara could hear movement through the vent footsteps on carpet, the creak of bed springs, the soft sound of fabric moving. Were they on the bed? Were they? She forced herself not to think about it. And after? Marco's voice again. After he's dead and buried, we wait. 3 months, maybe 4. We mourn. We play our parts. I'm the devastated widow. You're the loyal cousin holding the family together. Then I cash the insurance policy. 50 million. 100 if Greenberg sells the heart attack story and they rule it accidental. We split it. You take your half and disappear, Europe, South America, wherever the hell you want. I take mine and buy a house in Malibu or the Hamptons, somewhere far from this God-forsaken frozen wasteland. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. People die every day, Marco. Heart attacks, accidents, random bad luck. Dom's lived a dangerous life. No one's going to be shocked when his heart gives out. They'll be surprised it didn't happen sooner. Another pause. Longer this time. When Marco spoke again, his voice was different. Harder. Decided. Christmas Eve. You're sure that's the best time? It's perfect. Family gathered. Holiday stress. Rich food. Alcohol. If anything looks suspicious, there are a dozen explanations that don't involve murder. Okay. I'm in. Let's do it. Sophia laughed. Soft and low and satisfied. I knew you would be. You've wanted this as long as I have. We both deserve better than being his shadow. Then let's take what we deserve. Footsteps, moving toward the door. Amara's pulse spiked if they came through the closet, if they opened the study door and found her standing on a ladder with a dust cloth and terror written all over her face. But the footsteps went the other way, toward the bedroom door leading to the hallway. I'll see you at the sit-down on Friday, Marco said. And Sophia? Not a word to anyone. Not your sister, not your friends, nobody. You think I'm stupid? I think we're about to commit murder. Stupid is a luxury we can't afford. The bedroom door opened, closed. Silence. Amara stood on the ladder for a full minute, maybe longer, unable to move. Her legs felt like water. Her hands shook so hard she dropped the dust cloth, It fell to the floor with a soft whisper of fabric against wood. She climbed down, slowly, carefully. Her knees almost buckled when her feet hit the floor. She looked around the study at the expensive books, the mahogany desk, the locked filing cabinet in the corner. Everything looked the same as it had 10 minutes ago. But the world had shifted, tilted. Nothing would ever be the same again. Amara picked up the dust cloth with trembling fingers. She put away the stepladder. She gathered her cleaning supplies and walked out of the study on legs that didn't feel entirely connected to her body. She went to her room above the garage and sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall, replaying the conversation in her head. 3 more weeks. Christmas Eve. Antifreeze in his whiskey. $100 million. She was just a housekeeper, 26 years old, no family, no connections, no power. Who would believe her? Who would listen? If she went to the police, Mrs. Moretti would deny everything. Marco would call her a liar, maybe worse. They'd paint her as a disgruntled employee, a troublemaker, someone looking for attention or money. The cops might not even investigate. Men like Dominic Moretti didn't get help from the police. They got watched, investigated, arrested. If she told Mr. Moretti directly, would he believe her? Would he think she was trying to stir up trouble between him and his wife, his cousin? Would he fire her? Worse. If she stayed silent, if she did nothing, Dominic Moretti would die, poisoned by his wife and cousin, murdered for money while his family watched. Amara put her face in her hands. For the first time since her mother died, she cried. Not because she was scared, though she was. Not because she didn't know what to do, though she didn't. She cried because her mother's voice was so loud in her head, she could almost feel Diane Hayes standing behind her, hand on her shoulder, speaking the truth that Amara had been raised to live by. Baby, silence in the face of evil makes you just as guilty as the person doing wrong. You speak up. You always speak up, even when it costs you, especially when it costs you. Amara wiped her eyes, took a breath, made a decision. She would speak up. But not yet. Not without knowing more. For the next 2 weeks, Amara Hayes became a ghost. She moved through the Moretti mansion like smoke, present but invisible, observing everything, absorbing details, looking for proof, for confirmation, for anything that might help her save a man she barely knew from a death he didn't see coming. She watched Dominic Moretti, really watched him. She saw him leave for Sunday morning mass at Holy Name Cathedral, returning with flowers that he placed on a shelf in his study, the same shelf where his mother's photograph sat in a silver frame. She saw him take calls at all hours, his voice quiet and controlled, discussing business she couldn't hear but could imagine. She saw him reading late at night in the library, not mob business but actual books, history, biography, something about the Italian campaign in World War II. She saw the way he said please and thank you to her, to Sal the driver, to the landscaper and the pool guy and everyone who worked for him. Not because he had to, because that's who he was when no one important was watching. She saw him eat dinner alone most nights, his wife claiming headaches or previous engagements or reasons to be anywhere except at the same table. She saw the loneliness in his posture when he thought no one was looking. And she saw him with his crew, Marco and Joey Numbers, and Uncle Carmine and the others who came through the house for meetings. She saw the respect they showed him, the loyalty, the genuine affection beneath the business. Dominic Moretti was a criminal. Amara wasn't naive enough to think otherwise. The man ran an operation that probably destroyed lives, broke laws, operated outside every moral boundary society drew. But he was also human, complicated, more than the sum of his sins. And more than that, he was a man who didn't deserve to die, choking on his own vomit, while his wife and cousin counted money and planned their escape. On December 23rd, 14 days after Amara overheard the conversation that changed everything, she made her decision. She would warn him. She would tell him the truth. She would speak up. And whatever happened after that, if he believed her, if he didn't, if she lost her job or her safety or her life, at least she'd know she'd done the right thing. At least her mother would be proud. We're deep into this now. What time is it where you're watching this? Are you alone, or is someone with you? Drop a comment and let me know. This story gets darker before the dawn. The shadows near the service entrance smelled like winter and wet concrete and fear. Amara's hand was still on Dominic's forearm, her grip surprisingly strong for someone half his size. Her breath came in small clouds of white vapor, quick and controlled, like she was working very hard to keep herself calm. Dominic Moretti had killed 5 men in his life. 3 of them deserved it. One was business, one was a mistake he'd carry to his grave. He knew what violence looked like up close, the way a man's eyes went wide when he realized the conversation had turned lethal, the sound of air escaping lungs that would never fill again, the weight of consequences that couldn't be undone. But standing in his own driveway, snow falling around him like ash, listening to his housekeeper tell him his wife was planning to murder him, Dominic felt something he hadn't experienced in 20 years. Terror. Not the adrenaline-spiked fear of a firefight or an ambush. This was deeper, colder, the kind of terror that comes from realizing the ground you've been standing on was never solid at all. Talk. His voice came out rougher than he intended. Now. And this better be good. Amara met his eyes without flinching. Most people couldn't hold his gaze for more than a few seconds. She looked at him like she was taking his measure, deciding in real time whether he deserved the risk she was taking. "Your wife is going to kill you," she said. Each word precise, deliberate. Christmas Eve, during the family gathering. She's going to put antifreeze ethylene glycol in your whiskey, the one you drink after dinner. It'll look like a heart attack. The family doctor's already been paid off to sign the death certificate. Natural causes, no autopsy. $50 million life insurance policy. $100 million if it's ruled accidental. The information came at him like punches. Dom's jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. His hand tightened on the Beretta, still holstered at his hip. Not drawing it, just anchoring himself to something solid while the world spun sideways. "Say that again." His voice was flat now, dead, the voice he used in the moments before someone stopped breathing. "Slow, don't leave anything out." Amara took a breath. Let it out. When she spoke again, her voice was steady, strong. This wasn't a woman falling apart under pressure. This was someone who'd made a decision and was following through no matter what it cost her. December 9th, 2:30 in the afternoon. I was cleaning your study. I heard them through the heating vent, your wife and someone else. They were in her bedroom, planning it. She said the insurance policy updates January 1st, drops to 30 million. They have to do it now to get the full amount. She said you drink the whiskey because it's tradition, because your father did it, because you're superstitious about family rituals. She said Dr. Greenberg's been paid $100,000 to rule it natural causes. She said no one would suspect because you've lived a dangerous life, and eventually everyone's luck runs out. Dom's breathing changed, shallower, faster. His pupils dilated in the darkness, adjusting not to the lack of light but to the information being laid out in front of him like evidence at a crime scene. Who was with her? He already knew. Somewhere deep in his gut, beneath the shock and rage and disbelief, he already knew. But he needed to hear it, needed the words spoken out loud so they became real. Amara hesitated, just for a second. Her eyes flickered with something that might have been pity. "Your cousin, Marco." The name landed like a hollow point to the chest. Dom felt his knees go weak, actually weak. He locked them, forced himself to stay standing, to stay present, to not let the world tilt too far off its axis. Marco. His blood, his underboss, his brother in everything but name. The man who'd stood beside him at his mother's funeral and sworn loyalty on her grave. The man he'd trusted with his life for 8 years. The man he'd killed for, would have died for. The taste of copper flooded his mouth. He'd bitten through the inside of his cheek without realizing it. He swallowed blood and bile and rage, so pure it felt like swallowing glass. "You're sure?" It wasn't a question. He could see the truth in her eyes, but he needed to hear it anyway. "I'm sure. I heard them planning it. I've been watching them for 2 weeks, gathering details, making sure I wasn't wrong, making sure I had enough information to convince you before I said anything." Dom looked up at the second-floor window, at the light spilling out, at the shadows moving behind the curtains, 2 figures, close together, touching in ways that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with betrayal. His wife, his cousin, plotting his murder, celebrating it before it even happened. The ringing in his ears was so loud it drowned out the sound of snow falling. The world narrowed to a pinpoint: the window, the light, the shadows, the truth he couldn't unsee. He wanted to storm inside, wanted to kick down the door and put bullets in both their heads before they could draw breath to explain. Wanted to paint the walls with the consequences of their betrayal. But Dominic Moretti hadn't survived 20 years in this life by acting on impulse. He pulled his cell phone from his coat pocket. Motorola StarTAC. The flip phone was bulky and heavy, All black plastic and stubby antenna, the cutting edge of mobile technology in 1998. He flipped it open. The screen glowed green in the darkness. He dialed a number he knew by heart. 3 rings. Yeah, Tommy Vaccaro's voice. Gruff, irritated at being called at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. Tommy, it's me. The irritation vanished. When the boss called, you paid attention. Dom, what's going on? Get to my house. Now. Bring the crew, Joey, Sal and Frankie. Bring recording equipment, video camera, audio recorder, whatever we've got. We're catching rats tonight. Silence on the other end. Tommy, 2 times. Vaccaro hadn't earned his nickname by being slow. He understood immediately that this wasn't a regular call. This was war. How many rats we talking about? 2, maybe more. I'll explain when you get here. How fast can you move? 20 minutes, maybe 30 depending on traffic. Make it 20. You got it, boss. Dom hung up, flipped the phone closed, slipped it back into his pocket. He looked at Amara, really looked at her. This woman who cleaned his floors and pressed his shirts and moved through his life like furniture. This woman who'd risked everything to warn him about a death he didn't see coming. Why didn't you come to me sooner? His voice was quieter now, still hard, but with an edge of something else. Curiosity, maybe. Respect. Amara didn't look away. Because I needed to be sure. I needed details, dates, names, proof. If I came to you 2 weeks ago with just a story about overhearing a conversation, you might not have believed me. You might have thought I was lying, trying to cause problems. Or worse, you might have confronted them before you had enough evidence, and they would have just denied it, changed the plan, waited until you weren't watching. Smart, disciplined, calculating, Dom felt a flicker of something that wasn't rage. Admiration, maybe. And what? You said you needed proof. What else? Amara held his gaze. When she spoke, her voice was steady, strong, unafraid. I needed to know if you were worth saving. The words hung in the cold December air like a challenge. The audacity of it, this housekeeper, this woman with no power and no protection, telling a capo in the Chicago outfit that she'd judged him and decided his life had value should have offended him, should have made him angry. Instead, it earned his respect. And? Dom asked again. Am I? Amara didn't smile, didn't soften. I'm standing here, aren't I? Dom almost laughed. Would have, if the circumstances were different. If his wife and cousin weren't upstairs planning his murder. If his entire world hadn't just collapsed like a building with the foundations blown out. What's your name? Your real name, not the one on the employment paperwork. Amara Hayes. Amara Hayes. Dom repeated it, committing it to memory. When this is over, assuming I survive, you're getting a raise, and you're never cleaning another floor as long as you live. I don't want your money, Mr. Moretti. Then what do you want? Amara considered the question. The snow continued to fall around them, thick and quiet, coating the driveway and the lawn and the trees in white. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Normal sounds. A normal night in Barrington Hills. I want to know I did the right thing, Amara said finally. I want to know that my mama would be proud. That's all. Dom nodded once. Sharp. Final. Your mama would be proud. And when this is done, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. The risk you took, the life you saved. I don't want recognition. Too bad. You're getting it anyway. Headlights cut through the darkness. A black Cadillac Escalade pulled into the driveway, followed by a Lincoln Town car. Both vehicles parked behind Dom's car, engines idling, exhaust billowing white in the cold air. Tommy Vaccaro stepped out of the Escalade, 52 years old, built like a fire hydrant, wearing a leather jacket and jeans and Timberland boots. He'd been Dom's consigliere for 6 years, the advisor, the strategist, the man who thought 3 moves ahead and never made a decision based on emotion. Joey Numbers Costello climbed out of the passenger side. 41, thin as a rail, accountant by training, enforcer by necessity. He carried a black duffel bag, the recording equipment. Sal Benedetto, Dom's driver, emerged from the town car, along with Frankie the Fist DeLuca. Both men were soldiers, loyal, professional, the kind of guys who asked questions later, if at all. Tommy approached, his breath forming clouds in the December cold. His eyes took in the scene, Dom in the shadows, the housekeeper beside him. The mansion lit up like Christmas had come early, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Talk to me, boss. What's going on? Dom's voice was cold, controlled. The voice of a man who'd made a decision and would see it through no matter what it cost. My wife and my cousin are upstairs right now, planning to kill me. Christmas Eve, antifreeze in my whiskey, $50 million life insurance policy. Tommy's expression didn't change. He'd been in the life too long to show shock, but his eyes hardened, his jaw tightened. You're sure? She heard them. Dom gestured to Amara. Overheard the whole conversation. Been watching them for 2 weeks. I believe her. Tommy looked at Amara, sized her up in 3 seconds flat. Then he looked back at Dom and nodded once. What do you need? I need proof. Video, audio, something that'll hold up if this goes sideways. I need them on tape talking about it, admitting it, confirming every detail. Joey Numbers stepped forward, already unzipping the duffel bag. I got a Sony Handycam in here, records to high 8 tape, and a voice-activated audio recorder. Where do you want them? Dom thought for a moment. Calculating. Planning. Study's got a bookshelf with a clear view of the desk. Hide the camera there. Put the recorder in the desk drawer. I'll make sure it's open. I'm going to bring them downstairs, confront them, get them talking. I need everything on tape. And if they don't talk? Frankie asked. His voice was a low rumble, like gravel in a cement mixer. If they lawyer up or just stay quiet? Dom's smile was cold, sharp. The smile of a predator who'd just spotted wounded prey. They'll talk. I'll make sure of it. Tommy lit a cigarette Marlboro Red, no filter. He took a long drag, exhaled smoke that mixed with the snow and his breath. Dom, you understand what this means, right? If your wife and Marco are really planning this, if this is real, you can't just let them walk away. Not after this. You know that. I know. So what's the play? We get them on tape. Then what? Dom looked up at the second-floor window again, at the shadows moving behind the curtains, at the 2 people who decided his life was worth less than money, less than freedom, less than whatever future they'd planned together. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, deadly, final. Then we make sure they understand something very important about betrayal in this life. What's that? It only works if the person you're betraying doesn't find out. Tommy nodded slowly, understanding, accepting. This was the life. This was the cost of betrayal. Everyone knew the rules. All right, let's do this. Joey, you and Frankie get the equipment set up in the study. Sal, you stay outside, watch the exits. Anyone tries to leave before we're done, you stop them. Non-lethal if possible, but stop them. The men moved with practiced efficiency. Joey and Frankie headed toward the service entrance, equipment in hand. Sal returned to the town car, positioning it to block the driveway. Tommy stayed with Dom and Amara. What about her? Tommy gestured to Amara with his cigarette. She gonna be a problem? No, Dom said. She's the reason I'm still breathing. She stays, she watches, and when this is over, she gets protected. Anyone touches her, anyone threatens her, they answer to me. Capice? Tommy shrugged. Your call, boss. Dom turned to Amara. The snow had coated her hair, her shoulders, turning her into a ghost in the darkness. Last chance to walk away, he said. Once we go inside, once this starts, you're part of it. You understand? You're a witness, maybe more. That puts a target on your back. Amara didn't hesitate. I didn't risk everything to walk away now. I'm seeing this through. Dom studied her face, looking for doubt, for fear, for any sign that she didn't understand what she was getting into. He found none. All right then. Welcome to the family business, Amara Hayes. Try not to die. He turned toward the house. Tommy fell in step beside him. Amara followed 3 paces behind, heart hammering, hands steady, walking into the darkness because it was the right thing to do, because silence in the face of evil made you guilty, because her mama raised her to speak up, even when it cost everything, especially when it cost everything. The front door of the Moretti mansion stood before them, 8 feet of carved mahogany and leaded glass, looking exactly like it had every day for the past 3 years. But nothing would ever be the same again. Dom reached for the handle and walked into the night that would change everything.